Hey students, one last video for today. I think we're going to try to get through 9 and 10 in this video. So number 9 says contrast the anterior and posterior pituitary gland. So basically we're looking here at the pituitary gland hanging from the hypothalamus. It's teeny and tiny, but amazing. It's got that master endocrine gland name that it's so famous for. So basically the reason that these two lobes are different from one another because here we're looking at the anterior pituitary lobe. Here we're looking at the posterior pituitary lobe. They have different jobs. So looking first of all at the construction, the anatomy of the anterior, it's a massive glandular tissue. It's glandular cells. So they have the job of secreting a product, actually several products. We'll see in just a moment. Right here, we're looking at the posterior pituitary made up of nervous tissue. We see neurons basically leading down here. We see a blood supply, but this is composed of neural tissue. So it is technically a nervous system structure. Okay, so that is the difference between the two. Here's another picture of it. We see the glandular cells here, okay, versus the nervous tissue cells over here in the posterior pituitary. And so I thought that was a really cool picture of those two. So that is mainly the contrast between the anterior posterior. The other thing that's different about the two lobes is what they either produce, store, that kind of thing. So the anterior pituitary actually synthesizes or makes 6 different hormones in this glandular tissue. And then it's going to release them based on signals from the hypothalamus. Okay. But the 6 that are produced here are TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, GH, growth hormone, and prolactin. Okay, and those all have really amazing functions that they do in the body. The posterior pituitary is a little different. It doesn't synthesize any hormone of its own. Basically, it takes 2 hormones that have been synthesized in the hypothalamus and stores them: oxytocin and vasopressin, which is also known as antidiuretic hormone or ADH. So vasopressin and ADH are the same hormone, just different names. So what happens is these 2 hormones are stimulated or synthesized rather in the hypothalamus, and then they are stored in the posterior pituitary. Okay, so that is number 9. And I wanted to say also earlier in the previous video, I misspoke and I said that we were talking about the adrenal cortex, and we were not. I'm so sorry. We were talking about the adrenal medulla. Okay. All right, let's try to get one more in here. The question number 10 is, what is the direct target of growth hormone and the indirect target? So we have a couple of different graphics to show with this one. So growth hormone, I know you read a little bit about it as you took notes. Here we're looking at direct targets. So we have this adipose tissue, this fat tissue that growth hormone binds to directly. It also binds to liver cells. Okay, so those would be considered direct targets. The cool thing about growth hormone is that this liver, once it has bound to growth hormone, it releases a thing called IGF-1, so insulin-like growth factor. That hormone actually travels to different targets like bones and muscles and areas that are needing to actually do the growing that growth hormone makes possible. But those growth hormone compounds, they don't directly bind to bones or muscles. They indirectly are affected. These targets are indirectly affected by growth hormone based on something produced in the liver, okay, called IGF. All right, I've got another really cool graphic here. And at some point, I will be sharing this slideshow with you guys. Okay, so this is really cool because we actually see growth hormone being released from the anterior pituitary, traveling to the liver. The liver hepatocytes are activated to then synthesize and release insulin-like growth factor, which that is going to be released into the blood, traveling into the blood, heading towards those targets of bone, muscle, and other cells that need to do the growing. Okay. So cool thing about growth hormone is that that it is one of the direct targets of growth hormone. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that if we have time over the next few days. Okay. So really cool thing.